Have you ever felt like you work really hard only to end up feeling exhausted and defeated because you weren't able to accomplish what you set out to do? Today, I want to share 3 lessons that I have learned over the past couple of years that have helped me to do work that I'm really proud of in a way that is both restful and mostly stress free. For a little context, I am in my 10th year of working for the school district in my city. I started my career working as a teacher for about 6 years. I taught middle school band. It was a great time. And after that, I spent a couple of years working as an arts administrator at the same school. Around that time, I decided that I wanted to pursue a different career entirely. And so for the past couple of years, I've been in grad school to become a counselor. Finding rest in the middle of work may at first seem counterproductive. However, the more that I've tried to figure it out and learn what rest looks like in my day-to-day work, I found that I tend to agree with what Celeste Headley says in her book, Do Nothing. She explains this concept of idle theory. Idle theory says that the entities that meet their survival needs with the least amount of work are more likely to survive. This concept is a concept from evolutionary biology, but it really seems to make a lot of sense in my experience when it comes to finding ways to do work in a way that is restful. To put it even more simply, work smarter, not harder, is something that I have found to be extremely true, and yet something that I find that most of us don't really take to heart that often. When it comes to the lessons that I have learned in this area, there are 2 books that have helped me to figure out my journey of finding rest at work. And I'm going to share a few takeaways from both of those books. The first is Slow Productivity by Newport. If I had to sum up what I learned from slow productivity in one word, it would just be the word limits. In his book, Newport says that the goal is to reduce your obligations to the point where you can easily imagine accomplishing them with time to spare. I don't know about you, but the work that I do and the field that I find myself in is one in which the task lists feel like they are never ending. However, one thing that Cal really encourages from this book that I have found to be really helpful is the importance of learning to say no, learning to limit your missions that you commit to, learning to say no and limit the projects that you take on, and learning to say no to the daily tasks that you seek to accomplish on your day-to-day basis. Cal also makes sure to clarify that just because we are doing fewer things doesn't mean we are accomplishing fewer things. A lot of the time, what we end up doing in many of our work settings is what he calls an overhead tax. This overhead tax is all those extra kinds of busy work that we all find ourselves doing, whether that's responding to Slack messages or emails, or setting up Zoom calls and attending them, or doing random paperwork that really isn't completing any true work. For these kinds of things, one of the biggest things that I have found to be helpful is to try and eliminate them as much as possible, or to set aside very limited times throughout my day to get that kind of work done. Additionally, I have found technology to be really helpful in this area. Whenever I can, I try to automate any and all tasks. My rule of thumb is that if I think something should be possible, or if I think it should be easier, I almost always go to Google just to see if somebody else has already figured out how to make it easier or more simple. Usually, 9 times out of 10, there is a better way. And I spend a little bit of time learning how to do it, and it makes my work so much easier and so much restful as a result. The biggest takeaway from slow productivity, like I said, is setting limits. I've mentioned this before, but we can't do everything that we would like to do. I'm going to say that again because I need to hear it too. We can't do everything that we would like to do. And so unfortunately, we have to make some choices. We can't please everyone in our workspaces. We can't please all of our clients, or for me, my students. It's just not possible. And so a lot of the restlessness that I find that comes from work, that I have found has caused me to be stressed at times, has come when I have refused to accept these limits. The next book that taught me a really important lesson is Good to Great by Jim Collins. If I had to sum this book up and my takeaways from it in a single word, I would just say that word would be systems. One of the fastest ways to get stressed at work, in my experience, is to live a reactionary approach to your work. I learned pretty quickly in the classroom that if I was going to be reacting to everything that my students needed all the time, we were never going to be productive. The way that Jim Collins explains this is setting up what he calls a flywheel. And flywheels are basically systems that produce the results that you want sustainably. A lot of times we like to make short bursts of effort or long Hail Marys of project ideas to try and fix something or to make big ground in a short amount of time. However, what seems to be more productive in my experience is to take a more consistent, steady approach, choosing to simply put in consistent effort and to accept cumulative progress over time. One of the big ways that I have found this to be helpful is putting in the effort to build certain systems on the front end of my work so that I can reap the benefits of that later. That is a lot harder at first, of course. However, I find that when I front load things, it ends up making my work later on a lot easier. Probably the simplest example would be like planning a trip. Sure, sometimes it's really fun to just go on a trip and figure it out as you go. But as I have found when I go to work, especially when there have been students involved or really just people in general, usually flying by the seat of your pants is not a recipe for a stress-free work environment. And so I always try to set a day or multiple days every couple of months to plan out whatever I need to be doing in order to be successful long-term. When I was a teacher, I spent several summers taking multiple days to go through all of the texts that we would need to learn and all of the skills that my students would need to master, and figuring out every single day of the school year exactly what we needed to learn in order to be able to perform at the level that we wanted to be able to perform. What that did for me was during the school year, I didn't have to think about what we needed to learn because I had already done that work. I could be more present with my students, and I could pay more attention when snafus and other issues came up. Another thing that I took away from Good to Great that has really helped me to find a more restful way to do my work is to focus on tangible results. In the knowledge economy that many of us work in, a lot of times it can feel like we're just randomly doing random tasks all of the time. A lot of times I find that work starts to feel as though you're working really hard, but not really getting anything done. And so I have tried to, over time, find different ways to ensure that I'm managing things that I can tangibly see growth in, even if that means I have to track it myself. For me, that looked like figuring out the percentage of students who were getting A's and B's and C's from quarter to quarter so that I could know if my instruction and the way I was teaching was getting better from year to year. When it comes to working with people, one of the best ways that I have found is to under-promise and over-deliver. This, again, is another adage that gets taught a lot, but in my experience, we're not as quick to follow the wisdom as we might wish that we were sometimes. I have found that people will rise and fall to the level of the expectations that you set for them. And so if people think that you're capable of continuing to push out work all the time, 100% of the time, with absolutely no room for rest, then that is what they will come to expect. However, if you set expectations a little bit lower, even if you know that you probably can do better than what you're promising, in the best case scenario, you are going to look even better for doing more work or doing better work than you promised. The flip side, of course, is if you promise too much and then for some unforeseen reason, whether it's another professional demand or a personal life occurrence that happens that gets in the way of your work, or you get sick, then now you're stuck feeling stressed and feeling pressured to rise to this expectation that you had set. I was really encouraged when I read this part because, again, working with students and families and administrators and other educators, I just found that we're all trying to do the best that we can for the people that we serve. And yet sometimes we tend to overpromise and then underdeliver. If we choose to underpromise and then allow ourselves room to overdeliver, that seems to be, in my experience, a recipe for better results. The question that I find myself asking a lot is, what systems can I put in place so that I can do the least amount of work while yielding the greatest amount of results? Hint, in my experience, it's probably not what everyone else is doing. I have found that sometimes it requires some creativity in thinking about how to do things differently so that you can get different results than you're currently getting. So those are the first two lessons that I have learned from two really influential authors. The third one is really simple. The average adult attention span is somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes of sustained focus. So there's this technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is really just a time management approach. The way that I do this is I set a 20-minute timer on my watch so that I don't keep checking my phone for the timer throughout, and I just do whatever work is in front of me. When my timer goes off, I will get up and go on a quick loop around the office, quick loop around the school. I will go to the restroom. I'll go grab a glass of water. I will go take a step outside. I will go listen to a song. I'll do something for 3 to 5 minutes just to give my brain a break, and then I'll get right back to it. Sometimes I find that even in those 3 to 5 minutes, I will have some kind of insight that helps me to think of more creative solutions that I wouldn't have found if I just kept plodding along. In addition to this technique, I also do a lot of what I've mentioned in previous videos, meaning I turn off all my notifications, and I also make sure that I have certain focus settings on my phone so that my phone is not distracting me from whatever work I'm trying to do. So the last lesson that I've learned just through experience is what I need in order to stay focused. For me, that is limiting distractions and working in small bursts of time with frequent breaks. To recap, the 3 ways that I have found to be really helpful in terms of creating a work flow that is restful are setting limits, creating systems, and finding a focused way to work that works for me personally. If you're anything like me, you really care about the work that you do, or you really want to try at the very least and get the most out of the time that you're spending in the office or wherever you work. We spend so much time at work, and we might as well get the most out of it that we can. And the restful way, in my experience, is the best way to do that. So I hope that this video has been really helpful to you today. I hope that whether you're going to the office tomorrow or next week, that maybe something in this will help you find a more relaxed, more stress-free way to go about your work. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, for taking a couple of minutes out of your day to just listen to me ramble on about some things. If you wouldn't mind, it would be really cool if you subscribed, liked, or commented on this video and this channel. I would really appreciate it, as I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing here on YouTube. Next week, I'm going to finish my series on rest by talking about what rest looks like in our relationships. If you've ever known another person, then you know that sometimes relationships can be stressful and sometimes they can bring a lot of ease. I have had to work really hard over the past couple of years to learn better ways to navigate the relationships that I find myself in. But that's for next week. Until then, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.